Thank you all for joining us today. I'm Anne Marie Lucas, the Transplant Center Administrator for University of Michigan Health. We're so pleased you were able to join us for another of our semi-annual Wolverines for Life luncheons. Today's program will be focusing on the importance of organ donation. Did you know that there are over 4,000 individuals across the country currently waiting for a heart? The heart transplant procedure is particularly difficult due to the small window of time that a heart is viable once removed from a generous donor. With only 4 to 6 hours to recover, transport, and transplant a heart, there's a sense of urgency to get the organ from a donor to a recipient. The need for organ donors is continuous and essential to help give hope to those waiting for a heart transplant. Today, we're going to be hearing from Dr. Pagani, a cardiac surgeon from the Frankel Cardiovascular Center. Dr. Pagani's clinical focus includes surgical therapies for advanced heart failure, including heart transplantation and mechanical circulatory support, as well as complex surgeries for valvular and coronary artery disease. Dr. Pagani is the surgical lead for the multidisciplinary hypertrophic cardiomyopathy program and has an active practice in surgical treatments for this disorder. He is the surgical lead for the Center for Circulatory Support, also known as the VAD program, and has an active research program focusing on the bioengineering development and clinical testing of mechanical circulatory support devices in the treatment of end-stage heart disease, clinical health outcomes research, and the use of stem cell transplantation for myocardial regeneration. Please join me in welcoming Dr. Pagani.
Thank you, Anne Marie. It's really a pleasure and honor to be invited today to speak for the Wolverines for Life and talk about organ donation and heart transplantation. Really, that's been a center of my career for over 30 years now, and such an important aspect of what we do. So I'd like to start off with our little presentation today. Some of what I'd like to do is just go over some little history of heart transplantation and some of the really important new developments that have been taken place with the therapy. Next slide, please. So heart transplantation really started 57 years ago in this hospital. This is the Groote de Shore Hospital in Cape Town, South Africa. It's a beautiful setting. In the back, you see Devil's Peak, but 57 years ago, new slide, please, a man named Christian Bernard undertook the first heart transplantation. And since that time, there has been a number of heart transplants performed worldwide, and heart transplantation has grown to be an accepted therapy and actually the gold standard for treatment of patients with end-stage heart disease that's not amenable to other treatments. Next slide, please. One of the important, Christian Bernard was a dynamic character, and a lot of attention went to the actual, procedure and the recipient of that heart. But little attention was paid to really what made that event possible that day. In the museum they have within the Groote de Shore Hospital, there is a operating room and off to the that's a setting from the original operation, and they have a number of mementos from that operation around in the museum. And I really took interest in this one because really I think what it represents is why transplant is possible. It focuses really on the donor, and really I think highlights here, as this plaque does, the courageous decisions of our families and our donor families that make this donation, this gift possible. And we should never forget that as we perform this procedure, this gift is a reflection of the family's wishes and the donor's wishes. And that makes this wonderful therapy possible. Next slide, please. In the United States, the father of heart transplantation is this gentleman, Dr. Norman Shumway. He performed the first heart transplantation in the United States and had the opportunity to visit Stanford University, where he was on the 50th anniversary of his heart transplantation. And again, it was a great event honoring the achievement of Dr. Shumway. Next slide, please. Now, getting to current, sort of the current landscape of heart transplantation, and this number is very important. And why is it important? This number represents the number of heart transplantations procedures that were performed in 2022. And why this number is important, because it represents the most heart transplantations ever performed in a year in the United States. And so that is a great achievement and represents the work of so many individuals, and importantly represents the wonderful gift of so many families to make this operation possible. Next slide, please. And what you can see here in this slide here is the growth of heart transplantation procedures over the past 2 decades. And importantly, since 2004, we've actually doubled the number of heart transplants performed in the United States. Can you click on this slide, please? Well, what's more important, though, is it took 10 years, 1 decade, to increase the number of heart transplants performed in the United States from 2,000 to 2,500. But in the last decade, we've increased that number by not 500, but by 1,500. So we've actually tripled the increase in rate of heart transplant procedures in the past decade from the previous decade. And I think this represents an astounding achievement and really represents a great effort on so many people's part to bring this therapy to our patients in need. Next slide, please. Despite that great achievement, as you can see here, the waiting list always outpaces the number of heart transplantation performed in the United States. So despite all the hard work in identifying more donors, we have an increasing number of recipients in need of heart transplantation. Next slide, please. And this slide just points out to the graph to the left represents the number of people that have been added, or number of recipients that are added to the heart transplant waiting list each year. And you can see since 2005 that the steep rate of inclusion of number of people, so that currently we have about 5,000 people waiting for heart transplants in the United States. And on the curve on the right, you can see that each of those years, the rate of increase or the number of patients added to the heart transplant waiting list, those curves are shifting to the left, meaning that the rate of additions of patients waiting for heart transplantation continuously increases. Next slide, please. Another important news is that we increase the number of transplants, but also the benefits of heart transplantation continue to improve with each year of treatment, so that in our most recent era now, if patients survive their first year following heart transplantation, more than half patients survive actually now 14 years following their heart transplantation. So with improvements in the anti-rejection medications, improvements in medical management, and also in improvements in how the donor procedure or the heart transplantation procedure is performed, has increased survival for those patients receiving a heart transplant. Next slide. Many people, patients and doctors have questioned whether heart transplantation has a future, and mechanical devices have been always touted as a possible alternative to heart transplantation, one being that they're more readily available than heart transplant donors. But heart transplantation, I can say with confidence, has a future and will always have a future. And I think the future increasingly looks bright. Next slide, please. There are some important challenges. The number of donors continues to be a challenge for heart transplantation, and increasing donor availability will be critical to this therapy. We want this therapy to be epidemiologically important, meaning that the therapy is not helpful if it only benefits a very few, if there's a large number of patients with end-stage heart failure. So we want to bring this therapy to as many patients with advanced stages of heart failure as we can. And the complexity of medical management and the cost of the immunosuppression and the cost of the therapy is really high. And there are lots of ways that we need, lots of innovations in the medical management that are needed to help make or simplify the management of the patients long term. Next slide, please. There's been a number of changes in the landscape in heart transplantation that have made donor availability greater. And then I like to go over some of them. One is the increasing US population. There's a greater population in the United States today than there was 2 decades ago. And so the number of possible donors has increased. I'd like to review a little bit about the opioid epidemic, because that has impacted heart transplantation. And there's a novel use of what we call hepatitis C heart donors. There's also an innovative program in the United States called the HOPE program, where HIV positive donors donate organs to HIV positive recipients, and that allows for possible donation of organs. And I'd like to talk a little bit about the concept of the DCD heart donor. DCD refers to not a brain donor who's donating an organ through the brain death mechanism, but basically heart stops and the potential donor is declared dead based on circulatory criteria, not brain death. And lastly, I'd like to mention a little bit about xenotransplantation, because that's another exciting potential in the field of transplantation. Next slide, please. This is a slide of the projected growth of the U.S. population. And you can see that growth is going to increase steadily over the next several decades. What is important is really the top shaded area represents the number of elderly people in the United States. And so you can see, relative to the other age groups, elderly patients will increase in the population or represent a larger proportion of the population of the United States in the next coming decades. Why is that important? Well, because heart failure is more prevalent in patients that are 65 years of age and older. So there's going to be more patients with end-stage heart failure in the years to come. But however, the number of donors from that older population is going to be few, so that really the number of donors, the larger green area or the darker green area, is relatively flat or stable over the next couple decades. So the potential donor population, the age of donors in that group, are likely to remain flat while the need may be growing. So we have to take that, recognize that as we look forward to how the changes in the population in the United States may affect donor availability. Next slide, please. It's a truth to the matter, though, and one of the downsides of donors is really the opioid epidemic in the United States. The bright side of the opioid epidemic is that it has increased the number of donors in the United States. That has made transplantation more possible. However, we need to tackle this problem. As you can see, in 2021, the Centers for Disease Control reported the highest number of opioid deaths in the United States. And we need to tackle this problem, and whether this will affect heart transplantation in the future, if we're successful in dealing with opioid epidemic, it has to be taken into consideration in terms of the availability of donors. Next slide, please. One of the aspects of the opioid epidemic has been in the increase in hepatitis C infection in potential donors. Previously in heart transplantation, if a donor had a hepatitis C infection, the organ was considered not usable for heart transplantation. About 5 to 8 years ago, therapy was developed that actually treats hepatitis C infections, and it can eradicate completely a hepatitis C infection. And so a strategy has been developed and successfully utilized in the past 5 years in heart transplantation, where we actually take a donor who has a hepatitis C infection and treat them with antiviral medications to prevent that infection from occurring in the recipient. And so we're now able to use hepatitis C donors for heart transplantation. And importantly, a large segment of the patients that have drug use history, the donors that have a drug use history, have a hepatitis C infection. And so that age group tend to be younger. And this represents an important strategy to be able to use donor organs from this group of or this segment of the population. Next slide, please. One of the other remarkable facts about heart transplantation is that for the past 30 years, as Anne Marie alluded to, heart transplantation was sort of constrained by distances the organ could travel. So we had to remove the heart organ from a donor and insert it into the body of the recipient and have the heart start beating within a 4-hour window. So you can imagine the time constraints that would be in terms of, if we're living in Michigan, how far can I go to retrieve an organ, get that organ back to Michigan, and implant that organ in a patient and have that organ start working within a 4-hour window. And you can see the curve to the right that after about 3 hours, the risk of injury to that organ substantially increases. And traditionally, this cold storage, where we take the organ remove the organ from the donor, place it on ice, take the heart out of ice, implant it into the recipient, and start and allow blood to recirculate through that organ and start the organ to beat. It was to do it in a 4-hour window and do it under all sorts of circumstances and with travel obstacles was, I think, pretty remarkable that we've been able to do that for so many years. There's been a number of developments, I think, that are facilitating organ preservation to encourage more organ donors. Next slide, please. One of the really truly remarkable developments, and it represents this system, the transmedic organ procurement system or organ circulatory system. This system, essentially what it allows is we were able to remove an organ from a donor and actually place the organ on this system, and we allow the organ to be perfused with warm blood, and the heart continues to beat during the time that it's in transport. So now, rather than being constrained by a 3 to 4 hour time, this organ can now sit on the machine, be pumped with blood, continue to beat, and we can now extend the organ time as much as some centers have extended the time as much as 9 hours. So you can imagine now, if we had a recipient waiting for a heart in Michigan, previously we could not accept an organ, say, from Florida. But now we could travel to Florida, procure the heart from the donor, and travel back and still have a viable organ for heart transplantation. So this organ has allowed a much broader geographic area in which to travel to obtain donor organs. Next slide, please. And you can see the actual system with the heart pumping on the system, and the heart is sterilely wrapped and can be removed from the organ donation hospital, travel in an airplane for any distance, up to several hours longer than typically and then we remove the organ and implanted in the recipient. Next slide, please. There's also novel systems that use a different strategy, but similarly have increased organ preservation times that allow longer distances. And this system is called, from Paragon, is called the Sherpa system. But essentially, what it does is keeps the heart suspended in a cold solution and perfuses the heart with a cold solution rather than a warm solution. So the heart is not beating, but we're still receiving nutrients that help preserve the muscle for a longer period of time than if it was just placed on ice. Next slide, please. One of the, I think, truly, really major evolutions in heart transplantation has been use of heart donors that have been declared dead by cardiac death criteria. Traditionally, in a donor, we obtain heart organs when a donor is declared brain dead and the heart continues to beat, and we remove the heart from the donor while the heart, as the heart is still beating, and we arrest the heart, take the heart from the donor, and then place it on ice and implant it into the recipient. Now, more and more donors are being declared by criteria of circulatory death, meaning that they have not reached complete brain death, but due to poor prognosis with a medical condition or from a brain injury, the family elects to remove critical life support, and the patient dies a natural death. Those in the past, kidney, liver, lung were taken from these types of organs, but never heart. In the past 5 years, heart organs were taken from donors with DCD criteria, meeting DCD criteria. And that has tremendously expanded the heart donor pool in the United States. Next slide, please. And there's multiple ways that DCD heart can be procured. There's a method called normothermic regional perfusion, where after brain death, after circulatory death is declared, the donor is placed on cardiopulmonary bypass and the organs are perfused and removed. Or a second method is called direct organ procurement and perfusion, where the donor is declared dead by circulatory criteria and the organs are removed and placed on machines such as the transmedic machines, where organs are then perfused with warm blood and kept viable for transplantation. Next slide. This organ donor pool, the DCD donor organ pool, has had a dramatic impact on heart transplantation in the past few years. Last year alone, there was a 60% increase in the use of hearts from this donor pool. And together, over the past few years, there's been now over 400 heart transplants performed in the United States from utilizing DCD donors. So this represents a viable and an important contribution to donors. It's likely to increase overall transplantation numbers by 20 to 30% when this procedure is more uniformly spread across and adopted across the United States. Next slide, please. So there's been a number of ways we've increased the donor pool: hepatitis C, the HOPE program using HIV donors, the changes in the DCD donor criteria, and so forth. Next slide, please. In the last little area that I really want to talk about is xenotransplantation. Norman Shumway, who was really the pioneer or father of heart transplantation in the United States, said that xenotransplantation is the future of transplantation and always will be. And I think that was a pessimistic statement about the complexities of xenotransplant. He is correct that it is a very, very complex area. But as you know, there's been several important developments in the United States in the past year or so. Next slide, please. So just last year, at the University of Maryland, Dr. Bartley Griffith implanted a genetically altered pig heart into a human. And so this was the first xenotransplant utilizing a pig organ. As you remember, many years ago, an infant at Loma Linda University received a baboon heart as a bridge to a human heart transplantation, and that patient survived 20 days. And there was significant controversy regarding that transplantation. But I think through the years and continued research, xenotransplantation is now becoming a more, I think, a more accepted potential alternative. At the New York University, a number of xenotransplants were performed in donors, potential heart or patients that were declared brain dead and not viable donors. They actually, families agreed to have those patients those donors undergo a pig transplant, pig xenotransplant, to further expand or investigate some of the issues regarding a pig xenotransplant. So work is continuing in this area. Next slide, please. And this is a picture of Dr. Bartley Griffith, who performed the xeno heart transplantation at the University of Maryland last year. Next slide, please. And there's been a lot of attention. This is a Nature magazine. Nature journal is a very prominent journal in the science field, and really had a number of recent scientific investigations on xenotransplant. Next slide, please. And one of these reports really highlighted the work from a German group, and that has done a lot of significant work with xenotransplantation, utilizing baboons as the recipients and utilizing genetically altered pig hearts. But through these investigations, it's found that the genes really gave insight to what genes needed to be modified in the pig. Next slide, please. And you can see that the current pig model, or the pig donor, has 10 edited genes. 6 of those genes were what we consider knock-ins, so they're actually human genes that are put in the genome of the pig. And there's 4 genes that are actually removed. One of those genes is a gene that represents we'll call it essentially a starch. And that starch, we as humans have antibodies against that starch, and causes a hyperimmune type of rejection. And so we were able to actually remove that gene that makes that starch in the pig, to remove that hyperacute rejection. And so the combination of removing genes from the pig and adding human genes to the pig allows that organ to be more resistant to rejection. Next slide, please. So xenotransplantation, I think, represents a real future. The clinical trial for xenotransplantation is likely to start in the next year or two. Obviously, there's lots of concerns about xenotransplant, but I think there's lots of potential with it. In addition, as we move along, there's always ongoing changes to the heart allocation policies in the United States. And in 2018, there was a tremendous change in the heart allocation policy in the United States, removing geographic boundaries, reprioritizing some of the patient urgency statuses that have really increased the complexity of heart transplantation, but I think have more fairly allocated urgency to patients waiting for heart transplantation. So next slide. Next slide. So I think there's been major changes in the clinical practice of heart transplantation. Importantly, it remains the most important treatment modality for the treatment of end-stage heart failure. I think the future looks bright. heart transplantation continues to evolve. And I think how heart transplantation will occur a decade from now will be substantially different than what we're doing today. Thank you very much for the opportunity to be here today.
Thank you, Dr. Pagani. And when you mentioned that you'd been doing this for 30 years, I think that's about as long ago as Mark Gravel introduced me to you in the operating room. And Mark's also in the audience today. It's great to see you, and thank you for your continued service to our patients and families, making a huge difference as always, and a pillar in our cardiac care community. And we're just grateful that you're here with us today. And thank you so much for sharing what is some optimistic news about the future of donation and heart transplantation. And
thank you very much.
Someone has actually not only gone through a heart transplant, but it's gone through 2 heart transplants. And Eric Morgenroth is a real estate investor, builder, and father of 2. And he graduated from U of M 1992, received his first heart transplant shortly after that in 95. And that transplant lasted 17 years until he received his second heart in 2012. And Eric now spends time serving as a trustee for the Children's Hospital Foundation of Michigan, as well as for Gift of Life. And he also started the Patient and Family Center program at the Frankel Cardiovascular Center. Please welcome Eric Morgenroth.
Thank you, Bob, for the introduction. It's an honor to follow Dr. Pagani, of course, because Dr. Pagani did perform my second heart transplant. So it's a nice coincidence that I'm here to thank him again and acknowledge the last 16 years I've survived on that second transplant. In addition, my daughter Emma is the president of the Wolverines for Life undergraduate chapter at the University of Michigan, of course, and is in the process of applying to medical school because she wants to follow in maybe Dr. Pagani's footsteps, but explore a future in cardiovascular disease. So just want to give you a little story, since I am a UM grad and many students that are part of Wolverines for Life, whether they are undergrad or graduate students, kind of give you the perspective of a graduate from the University of Michigan. So I had recently graduated from Michigan. I was working, and just one day I woke up and had trouble catching my breath. Walking from one side of the room to the other, I had to sit down and catch my breath, and I didn't really know what was going on. Never had broken a bone, never had a cavity, had no history of any kind of issues. So I took myself to my local hospital in Birmingham, Michigan, and they did some tests and did an EKG and came back and said that my EKG was abnormal. And it just kind of declined from there. I had been I was pre-med at Michigan, so I had done some research at the University of Michigan in the dermatology department, and I knew that if I was very ill that I should be at University of Michigan. So even though much of my months at Michigan and this whole situation is somewhat faint in my memory because of how ill I was transported to the University of Michigan to be treated. My health declined quickly there. My parents were alive, and my brother was a physician, and my sister was married to a physician. So everyone was kind of around my bedside trying to figure out what was going on. But they knew that my heart was failing, and it was enlarged, double, triple the size it was supposed to be. And instead of pumping like a normal heart uniformly, it was basically kind of oversized and kind of more wiggling than doing anything it was supposed to do. So I was eventually put on bivads, which were large machines on both sides of my bed that would force blood into my system and then clean the blood and force it back in and do the work of that the heart would do. And I was artificially paralyzed because these machines had multiple tubes going into my chest and out of my chest. And if for some reason I jostled them or one of them fell out or dislodged, I would immediately pass. So I was kind of put under a artificial coma while this was occurring. And they would wake me up every, several days just to see if I was surviving. At the time, no one had lived longer than I think 29 days on this machine, and I had exceeded that. So they weren't really sure what was going to happen on somebody who on cardiac life support so long. Eventually I received a heart transplant, and many things happened during that time in the hospital. It was about 3 months, but I, recovered, had to do rehab, had to learn how to walk again, had to learn how to, basically start over in terms of physically, just because I had been in bed so long. I met my wife. We ended up having 2 children, my son Max and my daughter Emma. And then 12 years later, I was in for a regular routine exam for follow-up as a transplant recipient, where they do a echo on the heart to see how it's working. And, it's fairly routine. And it was a winter day in December 2007. And I had the test. Nobody said anything. Drove home from Ann Arbor to Birmingham, Michigan, which is about 45 minutes, and got a call from my physician saying, we don't like what we see on your echo, and we need you to come back to the hospital. So of course, now I have a wife and 2 children, whereas before I was single with, parents and other people that were my support system. And now both my parents were deceased. It was just kind of me and my wife and my children, and it was a whole new, fear and experience. So went back up to Michigan, was immediately put into the hospital, and determined that the heart muscle was damaged. Again, the heart was pumping, but it was not pumping uniformly. The top half of the heart was not pumping uniformly with the rest, and I was deemed to be terminal based on vasculopathy, which was basically gumming up of the arteries within the transplanted portion of the heart. So when you attach a donor heart to a recipient, typically some portion of your original heart is used as a means of attaching. And so the vessels within my original heart piece were still fine, but all the vessels within the transplanted heart were constricted, let's call it. So I was listed for transplant. Ironically, I had become very active with the University of Michigan Cardiovascular Center, what's now the Frankel Cardiovascular Center. I was an advisor for, as a patient, as an advisor, and I was involved in speaking at many Gift of Life events and University of Michigan events as a patient who had been very ill at Michigan. I had spoken at the 150th anniversary of the medical school, and I had been asked just before this rehospitalization to speak at the grand opening of the new cardiovascular center. So the Frankel Cardiovascular Center was about to open, and I had written a speech, and I was supposed to speak with the Surgeon General. I was supposed to speak with Sanjay Gupta from CNN, and I had written this speech that I was excited to be able to present. Well, now I was hospitalized, deemed terminal, and was going to be listed for a second heart. So I was in the hospital waiting for a potential donor. My children were visiting me. My wife was visiting me every day. My kids were writing me beautiful cards, and I was postering them around the room, as my parents did something similar when I was sick the first time, because from our perspective, we wanted all the caregivers, the nurses and the doctors and whomever else would come to my room to realize that I wasn't just another patient. I wasn't, a number on a chart. I was a father, and I was a brother, and I was a son, and there were people that wanted me to come home, and we wanted everyone to realize that this person was important to people outside the hospital, and we wanted the best care we could get, which is why we were at the University of Michigan. Because I had been ill before, and being pre-med and having a little bit of science background, I had a computer in my hospital room. I was getting dressed every morning in like blue jeans and a flannel shirt, and I was trying to not be sick. And really, many of my symptoms were about my heart rate dropping into the teens, and many things that, even though I felt okay, I was very, very ill. And so I was, charting my glucose levels, and I was looking at what kind of blood thinners they might use. And I was talking to my doctors about it. And because I had a 12-year experience with these physicians, and many of them were the same ones that had cared for me before, they were humoring me in my attempts to be a part of this process. And at one point, they had a heart that was available, and it turned out that I was still in rejection. The current heart, the damaged heart, was being damaged by the fact that my immune system was rejecting it. And my cardiologist, John Nicholas, came to me and said, "You're in extreme rejection, and we really can't list you and transplant you while you're in this position. And we'd love to give you this new drug. It's a silver bullet. It will likely clear out the rejection very quickly. It's called OKT3. And that will allow us to give you a transplant if and when a donor heart comes." And I said, "Well, what's the problem? Why wouldn't you do it?" He said, "Well, after your first transplant and you got the new heart, and then we did a test for rejection after that, you were in extreme rejection when the new heart was put in your body. So your immune system was immediately reacting in a negative way to it. And I'm worried that will happen this time too. And since I want to be able to use this silver bullet for that potential issue, I want to talk to you about what you want to do." So giving me the respect of what my perspective was, and realizing that the risk was ultimately mine as the patient, and my wife being there and talking about all the options, I said to my physician, "Well, am I on the highest immunosuppressive drugs I can take right now?" And he said, "No, you could probably be on a higher dose." And I said, "Well, we just did 1,000 milligrams of prednisone, of steroid, to try and get rid of the rejection. And I know it didn't work, but what happens if we did it again? Is it possible that could work?" And his response was, "Well, it didn't work the first time we did it, but it could work the second time. And the immunosuppressive drug going up might help you too, and we don't know." And I said, "Well, do you think I could survive another 2 weeks while we do that to see if it helps?" And he says, "It's hard to say." And so my wife and I made the decision to try another 1,000 milligrams of steroid, try increasing my immunosuppressive drugs, and try to save this OKT3 as a, wishful thinking I'm going to get a heart and that even is the time to use it. But that was the decision we made. So we got the additional 1,000 milligrams of IV steroids. They increased the oral medication I've been taking at that point for the last 12 years. And after 2 weeks, they did a biopsy on the heart, and it came back that I was out of rejection. So it turned out seemed to be a good decision. And soon after that, they found a donor organ, and I received a transplant. Ironically, as soon as I had that transplant, they did do a test again for rejection, and I was in rejection, as the doctor had suggested might happen again. They were able to use this one-time silver bullet OKT3, and it wiped out the rejection. So the point of my story is that being an active role as a patient in the process and giving the option to be able to help make your own decisions. In some cases, maybe you'll make the wrong decision. And for some patients, the answer may be, "I don't know, I'm scared. I just want you to do what you know is best because you're the doctors." All those things are about being patient, family centered, which is what is important for what I do now and what the University of Michigan does and many hospitals around the nation. So after my second transplant, I ended up having to rewrite my speech about what I was going to say when the new cardiovascular center opened, because now I was speaking from the perspective of a 2-time heart transplant recipient in the University of Michigan. And then I was asked to help start the patient family centered care program for the cardiovascular center. So I was the chair as a patient, along with one of the cardiovascular physicians, to start spreading this theme throughout the University of Michigan Cardiovascular Center of how do we make the patient the center of the care process? How do they become a decision maker and someone who can understand and be told what the options are and help make decisions that may or may not benefit the patient? So that was a really important thing for me. It's always interesting when I listen to a discussion from Dr. Pagani, for example, on how long I might live and what does it mean as a recipient, and how does it feel to think about the people that gave their lives or lost their lives in order for me to be alive. And I think it's very important to understand how grateful patients are, not only for those that put themselves on the donor list to become, for an opportunity to save someone's sight or save someone, give someone a new kidney, or in my case, give me life. After my first surgery, my mother reached out to the Gift of Life through a program that would contact the donors and say, "I want you to know what you did for my family and what you did for my son." We also didn't hear from the donors, and I'm sure that they were dealing with their own grief and losing their child. At the time, I believe it was somebody younger. And my wife and I did the same thing after my second transplant, reaching out through the Gift of Life, through an anonymous program, to be able to say, if you want to meet me, if I can somehow thank you in person, if we can, have a relationship, we're open to it. Again, we didn't hear from that particular donor, and of course we would have loved to be able to show our appreciation for their sacrifice and for what they did for me to be able to be alive. My first transplant saved my life, but then I had, got married and had 2 children. So without the University of Michigan Cardiovascular Center, without everyone that helped me, I wouldn't have my 2 children. My daughter wouldn't be applying to medical school and being the current president of Wolverines for Life for the undergrad program. There are just so many things about who I am and the things I try to give back, all as a part of trying to give back for what was done for me. So just wanted to tell you my story. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Eric. And what a tremendous story it is. And I love the idea of the cards reminding people that we're caring for you about everyone that is hoping that you would come home and excited to see you come home healthy from the hospital. And that's it's a real blessing for us to have you join us today, because actually I think not everybody feels comfortable sharing their story publicly the way you do and the way you did today. And putting a face and a family on a story makes a tremendous difference. And we're really blessed to have you with us here. And Dr. Pagani, I noticed you came back up. Is there something you wanted to chime in?
No, I just wanted to echo your comments. I think it was, it's really brave and of Eric to come forth and just mention. I'm really, really great to. It's really great to see him. He's doing so well, and it's really gratifying.
Thank you.
That what he probably doesn't remember is that I was a resident in cardiac surgery at the time of his first operation. Actually helped care for him then too. So we had consistency in his care through the 30 years. So.
Well, thank you again. It's great to see you too. And God forbid I need another transplant. I'm counting on you, maybe, hopefully in the next 10 years. But it has been 16 years, and the first transplant actually only lasted 12, which seems like that median that you referenced. So my health is good as far as I know. I have my annual checkups, and I'm hoping to beat the odds and be able to see my daughter graduate medical school and maybe have grandchildren and do it. And for me, and this is aside from transplantation, but somebody with a chronic issue, trying to figure out when is the right time to stop and enjoy life, and when is it the right, when do you decide that life is short, because we all have the risk of being in a car accident or having a heart attack or whatever happens to be. And maybe I have a greater focus on what my long-term survival rate is, but it's very difficult to live your life and work and have kids and try to be a part of that while also trying to recognize that life is short, and when do we start, trying to just enjoy life. So it's something I battle with every day. But I'm very grateful to be here, considering that I was not supposed to survive 28 years ago.
Wonderful stories. Best of health.
Thank you. I appreciate it. It's nice seeing you.
That's a great reminder to all of us. I think as a tissue recipient years ago after following an accident, I remember waking up from surgery and the physician telling me that I had a tissue, that they'd use donor tissue to donor bone to rebuild my knee. And I got really excited. Now, part of it might have been the anesthesia, but I was kind of like, wow, that's great, because I've been working in transplant and I'd met so many donor families and so many recipients. But the idea of the concept of gratitude became very real for me. And before, I thought I intellectually kind of understood it, but the emotional feeling in the sense of what it really means to be grateful for someone making a decision to do something that was benefiting me in that way, at that moment hit me really, really, really hard. And I kind of get what you're saying. I feel like I have an obligation to serve that donor and that donor family by living the best life I can today. But it's hard to be focused on that 24/7 because life is very, very busy. So I appreciate your comments on that. And I don't feel quite as alone in that worry that maybe I'm not doing it right. I think just being here today and telling your story is huge, and I don't think you have to worry about getting back to life after this. I think you can focus right back on all the day-to-day stuff and know that you've made a huge difference today. And your transplant was one of a lot of transplants that have happened. In September, the United Network on Organ Sharing announced that the U.S. has reached a miraculous milestone of 1 million organ transplants, more than any other country in the world. And these aren't just numbers, they're people like you, Eric, and they're people who are able to get a second chance at life by receiving a transplant. And we've got a video from the United Network on organ sharing, and we'd like to take a minute and check it out.
I was supposed to die on February 6, 2004.
Doctors say, we have a pair of lungs for you. Do you accept? Absolutely, I accept.
My daughter called and she said, I'm a match.
She saved and changed my life forever. I'll always be thankful.
It's been 13 years now, just living again.
It's like the smallest of things that can bring you joy.
I love the feeling of the sunshine on my skin and the warmth.
I got to go to college. I turned 50 this year. I made it to adulthood.
We all live one heartbeat at a time, no matter what.
It's very real, keeping it very real. And now we'd like to hear from some of our student groups who actually take time out of their busy schedules not every day, but frequently take time out of their busy schedules. And some of them are here skipping class today. We're glad to have you here. We'd like to hear from you and hear what you're doing on campus to help share these stories and help save lives with that hard work that is unlike so many things. There's so many things that we want instant gratification. We want to accomplish something today, right now. And this isn't one of those things. This is one of those things that you're really paying it forward, and you're really setting a path and setting a great example for others by your work. And starting with our Wolverines for Life Medical School chapter, Shannon Claire is here. Welcome, Shannon.
Hi, thank you all for having me, and thank you, Mr. Morgenroth, for sharing your story. I just have a few quick slides to show. I actually became involved in Wolverines for Life, not through any personal connections, but through hearing stories like Mr. Morgenroth's and kind of being inspired by this greater amount of connection that donation can really bring to people. So if you can go to the next slide, please. I just wanted to quickly introduce the chapter for the medical school this year. We have 3 different parts of it. So Tyler is the chair for our organ donations. So, really bringing information to medical students specifically about how to become involved in the donation process as a registrant on the donation lists, but also how to potentially become involved in more educational opportunities through the hospital. And then second, we have Esther, who is our bone marrow chair. So similarly, she helps to spread awareness about the differences between organ and bone marrow donation and the different reasons why patients might be receiving bone marrow transplants. And then I'm Shannon, and I'm the blood donation chair for the medical school. So I'm involved in helping create blood drives at the medical school for students to come and participate and donate at their, quick convenience within the school itself, rather than having to travel between classes and between different rotations to get to be a donor for blood. So next slide, please. Some of our recent events that we participated in, along with the undergraduate chapter of Wolverines for Life, was the Campus Challenge. So this was put on as by the Gift of Life Michigan as a statewide competition to encourage people to register to become organ donors. And I'm happy to announce that we actually were the leaders in terms of the activity points. So we did have a lot of tabling events at some of the athletics games and some other events on campus, such as a movie that we watched and discussed together. So that was happening between February and March. And then we also had a blood drive in February on the ice storm day. But I'm happy to say that we still had a fair amount of donors come out to donate blood for us. Next slide, please. And then just some things that we want to keep on everybody's radar in the coming months. Tyler is going to be organizing an organ donation awareness week at the medical school. So he's going to be having some educational events, most likely a lunch talk. So we're not sure about the details of those yet, but keep an eye out on your email for that. And then later in June, Esther is going to be organizing some bone marrow donation awareness campaigns at the medical school as well. So thank you so much for having us. And thank you again, everyone, for sharing your perspectives with us today.
Thank you, Shannon. Thanks for taking time in your arguably incredibly busy days as a medical student to do something to pay it forward and to share it with your fellow medical students. I think we talked about it years ago that our medical students didn't necessarily appreciate every little piece of donation and transplantation. And I believe that Wolverines for Life has been wonderful along those lines in really getting medical students involved. And I am absolutely certain that now they're carrying those important messages and a level of understanding out in the community as they move out to practice in so many different areas. Not everybody got to medical school just yet, but I know that Emma Morgan-Roth, this is like a first for Wolverines for Life, where we've got a dad and daughter both speaking the same day. Emma Morgan-Roth is I believe Emma's with us to represent the Wolverines for Life undergraduate chapter today. Emma's on her way to medical school, not quite there yet. She's an undergrad.
She's actually going to be joining us over video because she was not able to skip class. She is studying hard for med school right now.
Oh, all right. We've got a video. All right, let's see the video. I love it.
Hi everyone, my name is Emma Morgan-Roth and I'm the president of the Wolverines for Life undergraduate chapter at the University of Michigan. Our mission is to raise awareness about and advocate for organ donation, and we do so in a multitude of ways on small and large scales. We host regular donor drives and share stories of the impact of donation on social media. We also produce events gaining state and nationwide exposure like Be a Hero at the Big House and the Campus Challenge. We can't thank you enough for showing your support by attending today's webinar.
Outstanding. And there are lots of ways that students get involved in other ways. Blood Drives United, and Isabella is here to talk about what's happening at BDU this semester.
Hello, everyone, and thank you so much to the speakers. I love hearing from everyone in this space. My name is Isabella Bonwit, and I'm a junior at U of M. I run the external affairs at Blood Drives United, which is the student group that operates the popular fall blood battle against Ohio State. This winter, we also participated in the winter battle against some Big Ten schools, so University of Wisconsin, Michigan State, Purdue, Minnesota, Penn State, and Illinois. And the winter battle was very successful. It's always great to collaborate with so many schools. We can really up the scale of the battle. And our group collected around 1,200 units. Final number has yet to be reported, but are in that neighborhood, which is really fantastic. This year, our club has continued to be successful post-COVID with recruiting volunteers, and we have about 150 members. Although we did lose the blood battle against Ohio State this fall, it was very, very close, which is actually a good thing going forward. And I think that we're very reinvigorated and motivated to expand our marketing strategies so that we can continue our winning tradition. We still have more wins over them, so let's keep that up. And overall this year, with about 2,700 total units collected, it's definitely been a successful year. Thank you, everyone.
Well, I mean, it's a little, it's kind of a little consolation for them after losing that football game, which was stunning. Absolutely awesome. Thank you for your work, and thank you for preserving those traditions and rivalries among other schools, as well as, again, setting a great example for your fellow students here on our campus. Absolutely wonderful stuff. And next, we're going to hear from Delta Gamma. Olivia Wright is here to join us. Morning, Olivia.
Good morning. And then I also had slides that go with my presentation. Oh, awesome. Thank you. So I'm Olivia, and I'm just like the philanthropy chair of Delta Gamma. So I'm going to share a little about what we do. I'm a sophomore nursing student, so I was super excited when I was asked to speak today. You can go to the next slide, please. So we have three main philanthropies. Service for Sight is our main one, which we raise most of our money for, which is the blind and visually impaired community, including Eversight, which is a Wolverines for Life organization as well. And then Joining Forces, which is veterans and their families, and then the Golden Anchor program, where we work with the elderly. Next slide, please. So I was elected philanthropy chair. This is my first semester in the job. So I feel like my main goals for this semester were to get people to do more in-person volunteering and getting members to be more passionate about our causes rather than just going through the motions. And then also just like spreading more awareness about our events that we have. Next slide. So I'm just going to share some events that we've been putting on this semester. So we did blanket making for the Penrington Center, and the Penrington Center is a nonprofit organization that runs entirely on donations for blind, visually impaired, and disabled children. So we do a lot of work with them. Next slide. We made cards for veterans at the Fisher House and in the VA. Next slide. And then at the Penrington Center, basically each bedroom is like has a different theme, and they try to make them really colorful for the kids who are able to see colors and shapes. And so this semester we've been going every week to help paint this new bedroom that's Toy Story themed. So on the right, that's like what it started out as, and we've like our girls have been going and like just doing all the work for it. And then the pictures on the left are the progress that we've been making, which is super exciting. Next slide, please. We also helped out our alumni with the therapy dog event and a bake sale that raised money for Eversight, because our alumni also do a lot of work to raise money for Eversight. Next slide. And then we also encourage our girls to do outside volunteering, just outside of our main philanthropies. So like one of our girls volunteered at our soup kitchen, and then another one does a lot with the Special Olympics through Michigan. Next slide, please. And then our main event this semester, it's on April 8th. It's a brand new event we're doing. It's called Anchor Skate, and it's basically just raising money for Eversight. Last year, we did an event similar, and we raised over $5,000 to donate to Eversight. So this year, it's just going to be like an ice skating competition between like various groups, and we're selling a bunch of tickets for people to come watch. And then we're also selling merchandise. So I'm hoping to meet the goal of raising more money than we did last year. Next slide. And then events that we do in the fall, and we're doing this coming fall, are working with the Penrington Center with therapy dogs, horseback riding, and then we do a trunk or treat event. And then we also have another major fundraiser for Eversight. Last year it was called Desserts with DG, and we just like had a bake sale at our house and raised over $3,000 to donate. Next slide. Yes, the motto of our chapter is do good, because it's DG, Delta Gamma. And basically, like, we really try to inspire all of our members to like do good in their daily lives just by like volunteering, helping out friends, calling their family or keeping in touch, and even just practicing self-care. And so I feel like it's a really good environment that we try to foster here with volunteering. Thank you so much.
This is awesome. So we're actually doing good. Setting an example is doing good, and doing it via therapy dogs and bake sales and ice skating. And I mean, come on, it sounds awesome. It sounds great.
You can't get better than that.
I absolutely love what you're doing. Thanks so much for giving us the update and for the slides. It made me want to just go and jump in. And the Toy Story stuff is fantastic. Like, that's just very creative.
Thank you.
Great work. Be the Match on campus is doing a lot of work as well. Let's hear from Maxine Kugelmas.
It's loading my video, but I think I can start speaking anyways. Hi guys, my name is Maxine. I'm currently a senior at the University of Michigan. I have been president of Be the Match since my freshman year, because during the past it had existed at Michigan and then it kind of went away because no one wanted to continue the club. And this is a really important cause to me, so I kind of started it back up. But anyways, what we do on campus is essentially create awareness for the National Bone Marrow Registry, as well as organize different drives along or throughout campus and go to different clubs and share what the bone marrow registry is and try and get people to join to potentially save a life. We are planning all sorts of events. We go to club meetings at least once a week to try and get them to understand what Be the Match is, because a lot of people just don't know about the National Bone Marrow Registry. But our largest event that we're planning for this semester is coming up on April 12th, where we're doing a competition between the Interfraternity Council and the Pan-Hellenic community. So classic boys versus girls competition to see who can get more members to join the National Bone Marrow Registry, which will occur on April 12th in the Diag from 10 to 2 p.m. It's really exciting. We have a goal of getting 300 new members on the registry. And we hope that it will just raise awareness throughout campus and have, more opportunities to save more lives. So thank you all for what you're doing, and we hope to see you there if you're not on the registry.
Doing a bone marrow registry drive, it's almost like sort of handing out free lottery tickets. I mean, because the deal is, if you get that call, it's going to be potentially one of the most rewarding moments of your life, when they're going to say, hey, you matched somebody and you can save their life like right now. And I think expressing that story the way that you've been able to share it, and where your predecessors in Be the Match have shared that story, has hit me in a way that I kind of wish I'd ever gotten that call. Haven't gotten it yet, but I'm ready. I haven't changed my number, so I'm ready. So anyway, thank you for what you're doing, and thank you for spreading those free lottery tickets around in the form of registering for the Be the Match registry.
Thank you.
Next, we've got a video. Organ donation and transplantation is made possible by a variety of people, from volunteers and outreach workers who encourage others to join the registry, to transplant surgeons who are the first to see the kidney, heart, liver, lung, or pancreas start working. But one of the roles we oftentimes don't consider is a medical examiner, who has the power to make a referral and start the life-saving process of organ and tissue donation. Let's spend a few minutes learning more about the medical examiner's impact on the road to transplantation.
What we do is very challenging. There are not a lot of people who could deal with some of the things we deal with every day.
Every day you walk into the office, there's something different. Just when you thought you've seen it all, you walk in the next day and you realize you've not seen it all.
When I train people now, I tell them that be comfortable with being uncomfortable. So when families are crying, screaming, maybe even yelling at you, it's not about you. They just lost someone.
Day in and day out, we deal with sudden and unexpected deaths, and some of them are horrible. Some of them are I call them like soul scarring. We have investigators in all these counties that are going out 24/7, 365, middle of the night, crawling out of bed and going off to deal with a tragedy.
When I started working for the medical examiner's office, and it was 2011, I wasn't as familiar with Gift of Life, and I think there was very little education at the time. And so I will be the first to openly admit I wasn't as supportive of the idea of making referrals because I just didn't know enough and I just didn't understand. And about 4 years passed and I went into the position of the chief investigator. That was about 2015. I really started working closely with the liaison with the Gift of Life. I became educated and I started to really understand Gift of Life.
It takes very little of your time to make the referral. That's just, I think, an excuse not to do it.
We automated the notification process so that no one actually has to pick up the phone. It's a software.
Prior to doing an autopsy, I can actually see if Gift of Life has, one, been notified of a case, if they have a hold on the case and if they're following the case, or if they have declined the case. And so that allows me to triage as I'm performing my autopsies.
They're professionals. They are professionals, they are peers, they are scientifically based, they know what they're doing, and they're responsive to what it is that we need as well.
All right. Hi, everybody. I am Megan Pachanley. I'm the program manager of Wolverines for Life. Thank you all for joining us this afternoon. I hope you enjoyed today's program as we were able to talk about some important lessons about the importance and impact of organ donation. I'm hoping you've all had the opportunity to read Emma's story, which was written by the president of our Wolverines for Life undergrad chapter about her dad, Eric, who shared his story with us today. Emma wrote about the strange coincidence of learning that her organic chemistry tutor helped transport her dad's heart transplant in 2007. How eventually she came into her position with Wolverines for Life. And now here we are again with Eric and Dr. Pagani discussing the story that started almost 2 decades ago. First of all, it was a great story. So if you haven't read it yet, please visit our website. It's a quick read, but it's well worth your time. The story had me reflecting on these coincidences. Transplantation in general is made up of them. There's the sad, heart-wrenching component where someone across the country had to pass away to make this happen. The organ has to be the right fit based on size, location, HLA markers, and so many other components. But on the other hand, we have a huge team of healthcare workers making the referral, going through a step-by-step process to ensure the organ is able to be transplanted, sending out a team for recovery, transplanting the organ, and then transporting the organ and then transplanting it into someone who has already gone through the work of getting tested, seeking insurance approval, going through the transplant evaluation process, and maintaining their listing until that fateful day when they receive the call. There's a degree of coincidence, but there's also a huge amount of work to make sure that everyone is ready, or as ready as they can be, for that call. And one of these transplants wouldn't have been possible without a huge scale of people who are both personally and professionally invested in each and every patient. But of course, I don't want to forget about where this journey starts, with donation. There are so many people, both in this meeting and in the community, who work every day to identify new opportunities, to reach out into the community and encourage individuals to join the registry. Today, we want to recognize one of them. This season's Wolverines for Life Leadership Award goes to someone who has worked incredibly hard to train volunteers so that we have an army of advocates that can maximize the impact and spread the word no matter where they are. She also worked closely with the Secretary of State's office across Michigan to streamline the process of joining the registry and ensure that we never lose that connection as to why this is an important mission. She's presented at our hospital and probably every other hospital and with a transplant center to collaborate on educational and outreach opportunities. She's always been supportive of all of our initiatives and activities and willing to chip in wherever she's needed. I'd like to congratulate Kim Zaza for her efforts in the organ donation community and beyond. Now let's hear a few quick messages from her friends and colleagues.
Congratulations, Kim, on the Wolverines for Life Leadership Award. Your hard work and dedication for organ donation and working with the Secretary of State offices over the years has been amazing. We truly miss your leadership and dedication to organ donation and transplantation. We know that you'll continue this effort even though you're not a healthcare professional anymore. We truly miss you and we wish you all the best and hope to stay in touch with you for many years to come. Thank you for all of your efforts over the years.
Hey Kim, congratulations on receiving the 2023 Wolverines for Life Leadership Award. Just want you to know I miss you here at Gift of Life, Michigan, and the people at Secretary of State miss you. I've been to some of the offices, and so it was so nice. They said that you gave them a call, each of them pretty much a call. So wishing you well, congratulations, and look forward to seeing you in person very soon. Bye now.
Congratulations, Kim, on your award. You deserve this so much. All your hard work and years of dealing with volunteers at Gift of Life and how much work you did with Secretary of State is just amazing. One of my favorite memories is driving with you and Patty Jo on our daily day excursions to Secretary of State offices to let them know how much they helped with the donation community and getting people registered. You're just amazing. I miss you terribly, but we still hang out. Let's do lunch. Enjoy your new adventures, and I'll see you soon. Bye.
Kim, congratulations on receiving the Wolverines for Life Leadership Award. It could not go to a more deserving person. I still remember when I first met you while I was working on the Secretary of State campaign and we came to tour Gift of Life. You are such an inspiration to me, and your warmth and kindness means the world. You have made such an impact on the donation community. You have a drive, a commitment to the mission, and a passion that's just infectious. So congratulations and enjoy this day.
Congratulations, Kim, on being awarded the Wolverines for Life Leadership Award. You have shown us how to lead from within and how to lead with that smile. You have made such a difference in the donation community. Your impact continues. On behalf of Donate Life Coalition of Michigan and myself, thank you for showing all of us how to make a difference. Congratulations again on this well-deserved award.
Congratulations, Kim. So excited that you are being honored by Wolverines for Life. You totally deserve it. Even though you are not around with us every day, you have trained so many of us that the work you did continues on. So thank you so much for training the volunteers, working with the Secretary of State, and all the other wonderful things you did while you were helping with organ donation at Gift of Life. Congratulations.
Hi, Kim. Patty Jo here. Truly, there aren't enough words in the English language for me to say how I feel about you. So I'll just say this. You're truly the kindest person I know, very genuine, and everyone who meets you is a better person because they've spent time with you. Including me. I'm a better person because I know you. And you make the world a better place. And if I keep talking about you, I'm going to cry. You're truly one of the nicest people I've ever met in my entire life. And every time I spend time with you and I leave you, I want to spend more time with you. I just don't know what else to say about you, Kimmy. I love you so much. You're just the sweetest, kindest, nicest person in the world. And I love you. And that's all. Because if I keep going on and on and on and on, you and I will both cry. So I'm going to stop here. I love you, Kimmy.
Congratulations, Kim. She wasn't able to make it to today's webinar because, of course, she's out volunteering, but we'll be sure to share this recording with her. I'd also like to thank our speakers today. Thank you to Dr. Pagani for educating us about the past, present, and future of heart transplantation. Thank you to Eric for sharing his story and showing us how great of an impact transplantation can have on a person's life. Thank you to Anne Marie and Bob for facilitating the program. And thank you to our student speakers for all of your work throughout the community. If you felt inspired by any of these words, please join the organ donor registry, the bone marrow registry, or sign up to donate blood at the links provided on your screen. You're also welcome to follow us on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and LinkedIn. The last one is made for volunteers in particular. So if you volunteered with us in the past, present, or future, please add it to your profile and show the world that you think the gift of donation is important. Thank you all for joining and have a great afternoon.